Hey guys, welcome back. It's Mark with Exotic Car Play Place. Today we're going to talk about, hey, it's a snow day out there. But most importantly, for those guys out there that wonder what is the most reliable M car that you can get, because you don't want to wind up with a really high performance but unreliable race car that you have to spend all the time in the shop with and repair and replacing parts constantly. You want a car that is fun to drive, looks great, sounds great. It's part of the M brand, of course, of BMW, but you don't want to worry about fixing everything every last minute of the day. So I'm going to give you a top 5 list of some good bets, safe bets. Now understand, all M cars are leaning a lot more to the performance side and kind of veering away from reliability and economy. But that being said, it doesn't mean you have to have a total piece of junk. There are some great cars out there that I want to highlight, 5 of them, that are actually safe bets if you do your checks, if you're satisfied with the service history, and overall everything, the history and the background looks good on it, that it's well maintained, you can have yourself a great supercar, everyday supercar for relatively decent money and not worry about it breaking your bank. So my first choice, number 1, is the 2011 to 2016 BMW M5. That's the F10. That comes with a 4.4 liter V8 engine that happens to be twin turbocharged, producing about 550 horsepower and about 502 pound-feet of torque. It is an awesome machine. Now there are some things, of course, some shortcomings with it, but the fact of the matter is it is an extremely quick machine. It comes equipped with either a 7-speed dual clutch transmission or a 6-speed manual. By the way, I'd stay away from that manual gearbox in the F10. I love manual like everybody else, but it's a nightmare. It doesn't drive well. It's not synchronized well to the powertrain. And so I would recommend for this car to go with the double clutch transmission. So these cars generally don't have a lot of chronic issues. When I say chronic, I mean problems that are going to consistently be a problem. You can guarantee, that there will be an issue with that car. It's just a matter of when, not if. These don't have a lot of those issues. There have been problems noted, of course, with brake squeal, some of the early models with air conditioning that doesn't put out properly, and the occasional DTM issues. So that's drivetrain malfunction. And those sometimes have evolved from maybe an over-rev condition. You're getting a little frisky, the car over-revs, maybe hits the red line, shuts down the power, and then it spits out a code. And that usually means it's a lack of proper fueling. So the engine goes a little lean, and what ends up happening is it farts out a code for you, and you have to do a reset. In most cases, the drivetrain malfunction is really just that. It's just a nuisance alarm. But know this, any car that you abuse, it will take a toll. That being said, that is my first choice, the F10 M5. Extremely fast, pretty car, and is not that unreliable. It's actually quite reliable. My second choice for the most reliable, or some of the most reliable M cars, goes to a 2002 to 2008 Z4M coupe. I love that car. Initially, I never really had a lot of love for those cars. I thought they always looked a little bit like a boot. They sort of had an unusual look to them. But in reality, that's starting to grow on me. And as a matter of fact, where I live, there's a guy that's ripping up and down these freaking roads all the time by my place. I don't know if the car, I think it was actually for sale for a short time, but it's black on black, and he had it trimmed out just nice. He had it murdered out with black wheels and the whole 9. Man, did that car ever look spanky. So that combined with the simple fact that it has a very simple drivetrain. It shares the S54, that's the inline 6-cylinder normally aspirated engine of 3.2 liter displacement. And that gets coupled to a 6-speed manual gearbox. It also has about 330 horsepower and about 269 pound-feet of torque. Now, it's not the most powerful M car out there, but it's also very light and very small. And in a world of all these cars, modern cars, doing very similar things, look at all these SUVs on the market, for example. You can't tell sometimes the difference between a Ford and a Kia and a Hyundai. and a Honda. They all look so much the same. If I didn't know better, I think they mass produced them all on the same assembly line. But with this car, there's no doubt that it's unique. And in a lot of cases, because it shares the same drivetrain as the E92 M3, you would expect it to be very similar in terms of performance. Well, in straight line performance, yes, it is. But this is where this car has the X factor. And it has the X factor because it's a little bit jumpy. It's a little squirrely in the corners, and it's a little light in the back end because it has that heavy lump of an engine on the front end. And so as a result, this car will give you a lot of those great tire squealing, tire burnout capabilities. It's a high revving engine that'll go up to 8,000 RPM. Sounds great, looks great, and I love this car. It has really, really grown on me. And the simple fact is, because it's a simple car, there haven't been a lot of issues. Some of the issues, really very minor ones for the most part. There's been notes on, rear suspension springs cracking. And one very, very common issue is oxygen sensors have been known to fail in vast numbers. Now, that's not generally a large expense, and in most cases relatively easy to change. As a matter of fact, a lot of home do-it-yourselfer guys can do that. So as a whole, it's a very simple car, back down to grassroots of high revving engine, naturally aspirated performance, and you couple that with a 6-speed manual gearbox, big front mounted engine, rear drive. It's a hoot to drive, and in my opinion, highly, highly underrated. As a matter of fact, that versus an E92 M3, I think I would almost take this if you didn't need the back seats. That being said, if you need back seats for practicality, sorry, this isn't your car, but it is a great car nonetheless. My next favorite goes to the 2007 to 2013 E90 or E92 M3. And that is featuring the 414 horsepower V8 normally aspirated 4-liter engine, and you can couple that to either a 6-speed manual gearbox or a 7-speed dual clutch transmission. And again, it's one of these things, I've driven both, and honestly, I can't tell you which one I prefer. They're both fascinating cars to drive. The manual is a lot of fun because I love driving manual cars, but the DCT is so much fun when you're pulling through the gears. It's so fast that it's just so exciting of a car to drive. Not to mention, hey, this is the biggest engine that BMW has ever shoehorned into a M3 car, of course. It's the 4-liter V8, and it produces a lot of power. It's a kind of power, in fact, that will allow you to have a lot of fun with. It works as a great drifting car. For sure, you can do donuts, but more importantly, it handles really well. And for those guys that consider the 335 better than the M3 of the E90 generation, I would say straight line performance, the 335 has more capability, but the M3 all day will have the track covered in terms of handling and overall track prowess. This is an awesome machine and actually doubles very well as a daily driver because of its, a lot of its amenities that it comes equipped with today. So there's only really a few little problems that come with the E90, E92 M3s. There is, of course, the naturally, you've probably heard, rod bearings are a problem in some of the cars because that essentially is a shaved off engine version of the E60 M5, which is the V10 motor that is notoriously known for rod bearing issues. Well, this has the same basic infrastructure, and it essentially is 2 cylinders less that V10 engine. So it does, there have been numerous, comments and quotes and experiences of rod bearing failures on these cars. But the big one that you really have to be aware of are the throttle actuators. Now they're mounted under the, the whole intake manifold plenum there. They're kind of tucked underneath there. They're a bit of a pain to get at, and they're not inexpensive. But outside of that, these cars are very, very reliable, and in most cases more reliable than even, say, the 335s of the same generation. They're very great cars. Now, the only other thing you're going to struggle with is, number one, staying away from the police and avoiding speeding tickets. And number two, keeping rear rubber on the car, because you're going to have a lot of fun lighting it up, and you're honestly going to eat rear tires galore on these cars. They're just way, way too much fun. Still a little pricey, but that's why, because they're such great cars. My next choice goes to the 2000 to 2006 E92 M3. And as mentioned before, the Z4M shares the same engine as this. So this is also coupled with the inline 6 that produces about 333 horsepower. and uses that wonderful S54 motor that just screams to 8,000 RPM. It's just a marvelous engine and a marvelous car altogether, so well balanced. And as a matter of fact, a lot of the purists really didn't want to let go of that chassis. When the E90 came along, a lot of people and purists were denying the E90 and saying, we want more of the E46, just because it was a perfect balance. It was a smaller, lighter engine. It had a lot of power. It revved to the moon, and it was just outright fun. Now, all that fun, of course, comes with a few little headaches along the way. Of course, there's been notes on issues related to Vanos problems with these cars. The other thing I would say, SMG pumps are common failures. So if I were to advise you guys, stay away from the SMG cars unless you really need that automatic feature. Go with the 6-speed manual, because that's where all the fun's going to happen, and it's going to be a simpler car to maintain. The only other big thing are the rear subframe failures, where you sometimes had to get reinforcements welded in. But you take care of that. If you find a well-sorted car, it is going to be a lot of fun for years to come. So you can't go wrong with the E46 M3. And lastly, my last pick, number 5 for some of the most reliable M cars, is the E36 M3, primarily because it has the 3-liter normally aspirated inline 6-cylinder engine mated to either a 5-speed manual or a 6-speed manual, 5-speed auto, or the horrible SMG transmission that came with it in those years. So there's a few different generational options depending on the year, make, and model and all that fun jazz. But it's a great engine. It's normally aspirated, and because it is the older generations, it is a simpler car to work on. Now, it's of course not without its faults. Like a lot of BMWs, cooling system problems. Like you have thermostat cracks, you have water pump issues and radiator issues. So your cooling system is critical in these cars to maintain them, of course. Replace all those components and you're good to go. Not only that is an issue, of course, these cars were known for a bunch of electrical gremlins. I had an E36 years ago. Rear suspension collapsed on me, so I know that can be an issue. So, we talk about bushings and suspension issues. Those things can be a problem. A lot of them are more related to just wear and tear and age of the vehicle, of course. And as this car gets older, it's not going to get more reliable. But just make sure some of those factors are looked after. Now, it's a simple car, and honestly, they're cheap to get into, and it's a great way to experience the M car experience. But again, I can't stress enough, get yourself a well-sorted, well-maintained car that has a great service history associated with it. Other things, of course, rust, but that because of the age, you're going to find more and more of this as a problem. So guys, I really hope you enjoyed this video. You know what? That is my top 5 most reliable M cars. If you want to get into an M car, but you're really worried about how reliable some of them are and how unreliable others are, this is a great place to start. These are my picks for some cars that, although they're not perfect in terms of reliability, they are very, very well engineered and well sorted cars, and problems are much fewer and far between. That being said, again, as I can't stress enough, reliability and performance generally don't go hand in hand, and so considering they're a performance car, you have to also expect some of the repairs and maintenance to go with that. So everybody, I really hope you enjoyed the video. You make sure, as always, give it a thumbs up, like, share with your friends, guys. I'd love to hear more and more comments from you guys as well. Share those comments with me. I'd love to hear more. And of course, don't forget to subscribe. Let your friends know to subscribe too, because guys, hey, lots more great content to follow. Make sure you stick around. Love to see you on the next one. And I really want to hear from you guys. Thoughts? Do you have bad experiences with any of these cars? Or do you have other ones that you think are more reliable? Let me know in the comments section below. But again, don't forget to hit that subscribe button down in that little corner over there. Thanks again. Love to see you guys soon. See you then. Bye-bye.